Hey, I've just come across an interesting video which I'd like to respond to. Um, the video is by a user or a group called Liberty. Sorry, I forget the rest, but I've got a link to it. It is a few years old now. I have to say I have to point that out. It is about 7 years old, but I think the issues are still relevant. Basically, in the video, there's an elderly white man. Sort of having a conversation with a group of people who seem to be Mexicans and a Korean woman. My understanding that the context of the video is these people they're recent immigrants to the US, and the man sort of having a go at them. But it was generally quite good natured. I didn't see any violence. I didn't see any sort of serious confrontation there. But the video was entitled, it had racism in the title, so it was obviously implying the old man was a racist. I don't think he was so much racist as perhaps a bit ignorant, but I think racist is a loaded term, and it's one that gets thrown around in the US even more than it does in European countries. There's a few things that struck me about this. Firstly, clearly the old man was talking in sort of generalizing terms, like you people this and you people that. He wasn't aggressive, but he did come across as a bit ignorant. But one thing that struck me was the woman who uploaded the video is Korean, by the description of the video. The first thing that struck me was, well, okay, this is racism in America, but what about South Korea? South Korea is one of the most homogenous nations on earth, and I believe has deeply institutionalized racism. I've seen it from blowhard Korean nationalists online. And it seems to me there's a huge hypocrisy among some people from East Asia, right? I'm not talking in generalizing terms, I'm saying some people. Because when they come to Western countries, these people will be very vocal against racism, either against them or others. But they seem to turn a blind eye to racism in their homeland. And I don't care if this offends anyone, it's just... Well, no, that's not true, I do care, I'm not trying to provoke anyone. But I'm just saying, I don't want to be censored for pointing this out. It seems to me that... I pointed out this as well with the whole Jimmy Kimmel controversy over the Chinese statements. So it's not just Koreans, it can be this sort of double standard attitude to racism, I believe, is widespread among a lot of Asian countries. I.e., when we suffer racism, it's terrible, but when it happens in our country, oh, you know what, it's just part of our culture. So it seems to me that what she seems to be saying is, well, and actually she did say it in the video, was that, oh well, Korea's different. It's different. Therefore it's, well, okay, so is racism alright if it happens in South Korea? I mean, I really wish people could look at their attitude and sort of think of how it comes across as just plain double standards. You can't demonize this man as a racist and then ignore it when it happens in your homeland. And I say your homeland not in a derogatory way, but because you describe yourself as a Korean American. So presumably, if it is about immigration, so presumably you've come from Korea. So the point I'm making is, fine, condemn racism. The man, I agree with some of the points she makes. She says, there should be dialogue. He should just explain to people if he has concerns, that sort of thing. But, and that's a reasonable point, that's fine. But what I do take an issue with in that video is, like, it's talking about racism, but it's sort of like putting the burden on anti-racism in America, whilst ignoring the fact that it exists in other parts of the world. Now, the attitude I've seen from a lot of Asian people, okay, I'm not talking about everyone, is pretty much like this. Oh, this is terrible, there's racism in the West is so racist, doesn't accept us, etc., etc. oh, but racism exists out back home. Oh well, those people, they're not educated. It's part of our culture. Oh, don't worry about it. In other words, they trivialize racism when it occurs in Asian countries, but when it occurs in a Western country like the US or Britain or wherever, then that's terrible. Now, I think racism is terrible. I don't like it. And no doubt if I was there, I would probably be trying to reason with the old man as well. So I don't have a problem with her sort of trying to reason with him, but I do have a problem with the double standards. The fact that, now, to be fair, I don't know this woman. Maybe she does oppose all racism, and maybe she would say something about racism in Korea. But I do see a very widespread apathy in Asian countries to the racism that exists within them. And I have seen many people, my time in China, whenever me and the other Western teachers would bring this issue up, because we did see it firsthand. Not so much against ourselves, that has to be said, more against people of darker skin tones, Indians and Africans, for example. The attitude tended to be, oh well, it's just a cultural thing. They would never acknowledge it is what it is, which is racism. It's almost as if racism is a Western concept, and therefore when people experience racism in the West, it's a big deal, but it's a Western thing, therefore it doesn't matter when it happens in other countries. And I think that's just ridiculous. Racism is a human problem. It can be found everywhere, unfortunately. So I've no problem with this Korean lady sort of raising those issues. I just think there's some double standards in the nature of the video, because it's attacking this old man, and I don't think he was being particularly racist. A bit ignorant perhaps, but it's not like, if you're holding that up as an example of racism, my goodness, there's much worse than that. He came across as a bit ignorant, but I didn't see anything in that clip that suggested he was a hateful person. So to demonize him as a racist is a bit over the top. So I put a few comments on the video just posing these questions, saying, well look, yeah, it's wrong if he does hold bigoted attitudes, but why is it wrong when a white American does it, but it's fine when a Korean does it? That's just total hypocrisy. You can't hold a standard for one person, then just think it's fine for other people to do. That's so stupid, and I think it's wrong. Now, she struck me as being an intelligent and open-minded person, so I hope if she's watching this, I'm sorry, I'm not using any name because the title of the video was Liberty, so that sounds like it's the name of a group. I would appreciate if she would address those points. And it's not intended as a personal attack against herself. I'm just genuinely curious what her views are on racism in South Korea. Because you can find plenty of videos online about that, especially against black people. So, if she's against racism, my response would be, well, okay, that's good, but be consistent and show that you're consistent. It's like, for my own case, I've seen racism against non-white people in this country, and I've stood up, whether it be online or in person, and said, you've a bad attitude, you're a white supremacist, whatever. But I also am consistent, and I will condemn all sorts of racism. I don't like anti-white racism. As a white guy, I don't like being demonized because of what other white people do. So the point I'm making is, if you claim to be anti-racism, you have to be consistent. You have to be against all racism. You can't just pick and choose which racism you want to oppose. If you're anti-racist, oppose all racism. It's that simple. It's not complicated. And I think far too often there's double standards whereby it's like, it's bad if one person's doing it, but oh, we're just going to turn a blind eye if someone else is doing it.